Thank you for joining us today. The hashtags for this fireside chat are AIGA Design, AIGA Together, and Future of Design. Also, if you would like to support AIGA on Giving Tuesday and throughout the year, please visit aiga.org/AIGA-together. Now, it is my pleasure to welcome Bennie F. Johnson, AIGA's Executive Director, and today's guest, H. Art Taylor, President and CEO of BBB Wise Giving Alliance. Bennie?
Thank you, Amy. And welcome everyone to a truly special Giving Tuesday edition of our AIGA Fireside Chat with none other than Art Taylor. Just as a brief intro, Art Taylor currently, and for the last 20 years, has been the CEO and president of BBB's Wise Giving Alliance. And for those who may not be familiar, it can be found simply at give.org. As the head of this alliance, Art oversees all aspects of the organization's work, which includes setting the standards for soliciting organizations, for charities, evaluating charities on standards in relation to their activities, publishing the Wise Giving Guide, which is an incredible resource for those who are looking to give, and assisting local Better Business Bureaus with charity reviews on accountability and providing various materials to inform the way we give, both as individuals, institutions, business donors, and to the government. Art has been in this role since July 2001. And during that time, he's really transformed our notion of accountability and impact in charity. He's often called to speak at universities, in front of Congress in both houses, on looking at ethics in business and standards. He's a professor at Columbia School of Professional Studies. He focuses a lot on thinking about how our world can be better through charity and charity accountability. When we look at one of the core programs of Wise Giving, which is their charity skill, it receives more than 1 billion impressions, giving donors a clear, concise, and accessible means to know if they're giving to a trustworthy organization. So we talk about Art's background with Wise Giving. It's also important to note about his view for the future. Wise Giving has constantly been on the forefront of innovating in the charity space. In 2018, Art led a collaboration with the Stanford Social Innovation Review to publish a series of articles about advancing collaboration in the charity sector. This work received ASAE's, the Association for Association Executives Foundation's Innovation Award. The innovation for Art is not just there with content. One of the things that he's really proud of, and we're going to talk about a bit today, is in the past year, the organization has released GivingSafely.io. This is the first charity donation platform built on blockchain technology as an incentive to giving trusted charities access and secure donor information. Art has really been on the forefront of building charity, and I'm happy to say that he is now a member of our AIGA National Board. And we're going to talk a bit about charities and design in the future as well. So it's without further ado, I introduce you to thought leader, generous collaborator, wise giver, and futurist, Art Taylor. Thank you, good sir, for joining me.
Well, Bennie, wow. Thank you for that really generous introduction. A lot has happened in 20 years. And, it's just wonderful to be here at this point to talk with you about all of the great work that is going on in the nonprofit sector and at our organization in general, and how people are maybe even shifting some of their focus and how they give to be more impactful and to live up to their own values and personal aspirations. So it's an exciting time for all of us in giving, even though, we've all experienced quite a bit of challenge given the pandemic, but we're seeing that people's generosity continues in many different ways. So it's great to be in my job. It's great to have a chance to connect with you, someone who I really respect, and hopefully over the years have been able to give some advice to. But I've also learned quite a bit from you as well, my friend.
Well, thank you. And that feeling is definitely mutual. I think the first place we're going to start with which for those who know me and have been a part of my teams will know it's not a strange place to start. But for this fireside, I think it's a really great place to start. The first space to start is with gratitude. So my first question, Art, is today, what are you most grateful for?
Well, I think I'm most grateful for being able to live in this very dynamic time. It's a time where we're seeing change in almost every walk of life. We're seeing change in how people relate to each other, although not in always a good way. We got some work to do. We're seeing change in how we work and play. And we are, I think, adjusting and adapting. And people who have been left out are getting opportunities now, and they're coming into their own. And people who have had, I would say, opportunities, maybe some of which weren't as deserved, are realizing that it's time to give others a chance to compete as well. I also think that technology, while it has its problems, also can be a great leveling influence. I think that there are many people who are getting opportunities, for instance, to thrive. I mean, I look at the profession of design, for instance. There was a time when information about design, just like everything else, was cordoned off into certain quarters, and only certain people could have access to it. Now that information in design is free flowing and accessible to all, giving people who are creative all types of opportunities to earn a living and engage in the field of design to create better outcomes for people in different ways. You know, I think about design and its power to influence us, right? I mean, I think about images and what they do to our psyche, what they do to us emotionally, how they engage us. Images are very powerful, and designers, I think, hold the power to create those images and communicate with us in a way that's visceral, that really drives us to want to act and change. So we can see these designs more plentifully now, right? Because of the internet age and because of the digital age, we're able to access this stuff in ways that we could never before, both as creators and people who actually use it.
Well, it really kind of leads in nicely to one of the conversations that we've been having ongoing in looking at the future is how can we apply design and engage designers and creatives more in our charity sector? As charity organizations look to, evolve and change, and often there are organizations that are under-resourced, so they don't benefit from the other parts of the market where our community may be engaged, that where there are opportunities now for designers to be more thought-provoking, proactive, generative partners with the actual charity sector?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think nonprofits are natural collaborators with designers because, in a sense, we're all trying to create change.
Right.
Nonprofits are not content with the world as it is.
Right.
Nonprofits are all looking to do something that will change the world in some way, to produce better outcomes for things that are tangible and in some cases intangible, things like values, for instance, And how we do that certainly involves what we see and what we are able to design and how we're able to think about moving from A to B in a way that people can access and enjoy and participate in. And I think designers play a great role in helping us understand that. I would believe that something as powerful, for instance, as an image,
right,
can rock the world.
Right.
It can be even more powerful than the work that people do to make change. Just seeing things. It's the connection between institutions on the one hand that work on a day-to-day basis to make things happen, and movements that are, I think, stimulated by imagery, right, and by how artists respond to what they actually see in the actual environment. I think these are things that actually drive change, and because they move people, they move you viscerally. So I'm looking forward to finding ways to connect artists, designers, and others with social good work, because you're doing it anyway. Now, what if we're able to connect those who can communicate it and move people with those who are in institutions working every day on programs and products that will also deliver the kinds of outcomes that people want and need?
Well, I think that's a really important point. What you've been working on the last 20 years has been helping charities tell authentic, incredible stories that's backed up by the discipline and the work that they do, and creating standards for charity in which there is a trust relationship that if you're giving to a charity, you can count on their work to be credible and to have impact. And being able to have that throughput has been really kind of critical to the work that you're doing. And charities now understand even more the power of storytelling to build it through. Now, in our ideal world, all the stories and all the charities are doing everything right. But in the world that we live in, we know that for all of our good actors, sometimes there are challenges in the space. And so talk a little bit about the work that you do with the charity seals and give.org to help us navigate that world.
Sure. I mean, about when I started 20 years ago, we would produce a report on an organization based on our standards evaluations. And in order to see that, someone would have to actually go to our website to actually see the result of that report. And we thought that, well, charities are actually living by soliciting people. They're sending tons and tons of mail out to people to get them to give.
Right.
And many of these people will never actually see a report before they make a decision to give. They make their decisions based on what they get in the mail, or what they see in email, or what they see on TV. And so we thought a visual depiction of what a charity has achieved by being accredited would be an outstanding way for us to provide a service to donors. Because if you got that letter and you saw that logo on it, you would know right away that this organization was accredited and met our standards. Well, fast forward almost 20 years now, and we see that this is indeed a very powerful symbol of credibility, of accountability, of legitimacy for charitable organizations. And they all seek they all aspire to get this particular logo on their appeals. And so it's been a wonderful product that we've been able to put out. And again, it points out the power of visual, right? The power of symbols to indicate to people something that may be deeper behind it.
So, one of the things that we want to talk about today is, in our conversation with gratitude really sets the frame, right? You start with gratitude, and that opens up the door for you to think about giving and the power of generosity. Kind of understanding that we all have things that we can be thankful for really helps to set the mindset, if you will, for them moving to the actual act of giving. But for many of us, giving to organizations is something you often don't think you're able to do. We see the big institutional gifts, right? And it's, can my little bit be impactful? And we know that when we add those together, it equals much. But one of the things we want to talk today is demystifying and encouraging the power of giving for individuals. In our recent design point of view research, we saw that 40% of designers were donating and giving back to their community, whether it was work or serious or resources. So we know that we have the ability, but we wanted to talk today about what does it mean to be an individual giver?
Well, I talk to lots of groups, and the question generally comes up, why do people give in the first place?
Right.
It's not natural to take something that you have or you've earned and turn it over to someone else. It's just not natural, but yet we do it. So what is it that motivates people to give. And, it's one of the things I talk a lot about on my podcast, which is the Heart of Giving podcast,
Right.
which I hope, folks will listen to. But when I talk about why people give, they're generally, in my mind, 4 categories. I'm sure there are others too. But people give either because they're moved religiously. Some people do it because their religion says there was a deity of some type that did great things for them, and therefore they should act in the same way as that deity by being generous too. So that's one way. Another way is that people are just humanitarian. We care about other people because we know that if other people can be okay, then maybe we can be okay too. Or if something happens to a friend or a neighbor, we want to support them because maybe someday that might happen to us. Another reason we give is because of quid pro quo. And, that isn't often seen as the most pure reason for giving, but it's a big driver of many large donors in particular. I mean, if you think about a college or a university and all the buildings that exist in those places, they're given by people who were able to get their names on those buildings. So they're getting something in return. I call that quid pro quo giving. And then there are people who give simply, Benny, because it feels good. And there's been some scientific research done that sort of backs up this notion that when you give, you get a dopamine rush. And that rush is sort of what makes us also give sometimes. So any of these 4 reasons may underpin, why people give. As I mentioned before, it's a kind of unnatural thing. But what you don't want is to, have any one of those reasons that you give be undermined by not giving to a charity that can actually do good work.
Right.
And so we say it's really important to do some level of research or some level of investigation before you make your gift. Now, as far as everyone being a giver, we're all philanthropists. And I think we really need to demystify that term.
Right.
Whether you're giving $1, whether you're giving, $1 billion, it matters. It matters in the aggregate. And the power of giving not only transforms the cause that you're giving to, but it transforms you.
Right.
It makes you feel different. It empowers you. I would challenge anyone who is thinking about giving to make a gift and then ask yourself, how do I feel now that I've given that? And Benny, so many of us live lives without purpose. We're struggling every day to figure out, what is our purpose for life? Why are we here? What are we here to do? Well, if you can choose a cause that matters to you, choose something in the world that is bigger than yourself to try to resolve in some way, that gives you purpose. And when you have a purpose, then you can build your life. Everything, I believe, cascades from having some purpose in your life. So I think that purpose is really what makes us all givers. When we have a reason for being here, we think, okay, now that we know that reason, we need to make sure that we're doing what we need to do to fulfill the purposes behind that reason. So anyway, that's what I think we should all consider when we are making gifts. What are we here for?
Yeah. And that's really informed the work that we're doing, AIGA this giving season. And we really kind of reinforced last year. We're thinking about it, some of our kind of core purposes. We looked at what are the barriers to getting into the profession? And often it's education. And I know personally, I think about, my experience going to school and going to college was greatly influenced by the generosity of the scholarships that I received. Not only did it help open up the door, it was that first endorsement that you can do it. First endorsement that on the other side of this education, there was something there for you to grow a part of it. So we've taken an energy this year for the season of gratitude, And we're expanding our push for our AIGA World Studio Scholarships, which we looked and it tied directly into what is the heart of the organization, opening up doors for the profession. So I like to thank Mark Randall, who helped create and put this together for us years ago and has been an active force in pushing our scholarships, which are designed for students to be an entry point into the profession. And so that's what we've been reaching out to give us a hyper focus to why.
I love that, because I happen to know that not every person chooses a profession that they are passionate about.
Right.
We just don't. We pick things because we're exposed to something.
Right.
I talk to a lot of young people and I ask them, well, what do you want to do when you graduate college? Or what do you want to do when you go out and start working? And many of them will say things like, well, I want to be a teacher. And I say, well, that's wonderful. What makes you want to be a teacher? And they'll say, well, I don't know what else I want to do, so I'm just going to be a teacher. And they say that because the only exposure to anyone of authority or anyone who they could have admired other than their parents is their teacher.
Right.
And, you know, I just think about, what if we could expose millions more people to what designers do?
Right.
Surely there are creative minds and talents out in the world who never know that there's even a profession to express that, right?
Right.
And I just think that anything we can do to get young people exposed, particularly people of color,
Right.
anything we can do to expose them to this beautiful profession that can change our minds and hearts, where you can make a great living, where you can be of value to mankind, where you can create a legacy for yourself, and the things that you produce will live on long after you are gone. We don't get many opportunities to do that. I think about so many young people I grew up with wanted to be pro athletes for all of the same reasons I just talked about, right?
Right.
It's the glory of it. It's the beauty of being able to, you know, dunk a basketball or shoot a 3-point shot, or it's the wonder that they have of the acclaim that they get from being an all-star player. You know, all of and of course the financial rewards, right? All of these are the reasons that people wanted to be an athlete. Well, I think the same elements exist in the design profession, but kids don't know about it.
Right.
There's so many talented young people out here who could get the same career, I think, exposure, rush, excitement in the design field and leave society something much greater if they knew about it. So I just hope we can get more people knowing about it, and we can get more people trained and educated and oriented so that we can produce a flood of new creatives in this profession who can drive us to a new place socially and produce a lot more social good.
Yeah, we've been pushing around the idea that future change requires present action, and that we all have agency in being able to provide giving, right? And being able to shape the space. This is how we're focusing in, but that there are lots of good causes and impact that we encourage everyone listening to this fireside to engage and be a part of. But when we talk about the future, I want to talk a bit about the innovation that you've been working with, where people don't often think innovation in charity, and they may not think that I would have a conversation about blockchain innovation in charity. But here we are. And one of the things that I'll tell you all I love about art is always thinking about what's next, how to, take new opportunities, how to think about technology and apply. And I remember when you first reached out to me and said, I have an idea, and it's going to be givingsafely.io. And it's going to be a blockchain technology platform for trusted giving. And here we are, about 2 years later, and it's live. And I'd love for you to share with everyone kind of the thought process and what you're doing on this kind of cutting edge of trust.
Oh, you're right. It's out there. And But it's not as out there as it was when I introduced the idea to you some years ago, right? I mean, when we talked about this idea of using blockchain for social good, it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and
it was.
No one was even taking it seriously. I remember, we were talking to some colleagues about it, and they were like, what is this guy talking about?
Right. It was that moment. I encourage everyone, if you're thinking about the future, sometimes you're on the island by yourself. I was happy that I was on the island with Art, and we were talking about what could be a possibility and skip ahead.
Yeah, and skip ahead. So the first thing I had to do, frankly, was learn more about it, because I was, really intrigued by cryptocurrency to some extent. But I think we kind of understand what that is, and it's these alternative currencies, and most people are using them for some speculative purpose. But it was the underlying technology, the blockchain that produces the cryptocurrency, that fascinated me, because it has so many elements that combine accountability with the ability to distribute assets freely, peer-to-peer, that I thought was really fascinating.
Right.
And so I actually took a class at your class you recommended, by the way. I don't know if you recall, but you sent me a note saying you might want to check this out. And there was a class offered by Oxford Said University, business school. And I took a class on blockchain strategy. And when I came out of that class, I was more convinced than ever that there was an application for charities that we could produce. And we did. We produced the first ever blockchain-based donation portal. It's called GiveSafely.io. And you can go on to this platform, get a wallet, make a donation to a charity, receive tokens in return. We call them giving points. And in exchange for these giving points, you can get experiences with charities that actually bring you closer to the cause in their work. Right. And we are, it's also an information place. So right now, when we give our information away to different platforms, we get nothing in return. But on Give Safely, if you give a charity information about yourself, or you fill out a survey, you get additional giving points. So the whole notion is to create greater relationships and connections between donors and charities without intermediaries. And that's the key. We're not in the middle of it. We just set the platform up, but the charities are dealing directly with you. So that was exciting. And of course, blockchain is secure. We don't have to worry about being hacked by any third party or anything like that. So it's just a really exciting technology that I hope people will investigate and try to use. You can give cash, or you can give cryptocurrency to your favorite charity through GiveSafely.io. And you're right, Benny. I do try to live with at least 1 foot in the future,
right?
Because, you have to sort of think farther out to figure out what you want to do today. My futurist friend, Bob Johansson, is always saying to me, the next 2 years are messy. Who can figure out what's going to happen in the next 6 months, the next year, or maybe the next 2 years? Everything is very messy right now. But if you were to think 10 years out, things become a lot clearer. So if I told you, Benny, in 2 years, 50% of the cars on the road are going to be electric cars, you would say, probably not. But if I said in 10 years, 50% of the cars are going to be electric, you'd probably say, there's probably some plausibility to that. And what that says, though, is if that's going to be the case in 10 years, maybe there are some things I need to do now to get ready for that. But if I wasn't thinking 10 years, and if I was only thinking out 2 electric cars, I wouldn't be doing anything to deal with the coming of electric cars. So that's why I try to keep our business fresh by thinking further out, because it informs us what to do today. And sometimes those things we do today, they are just nibbling around the edges.
Right.
Small things that are just weird, that don't really make a whole lot of sense. Like when we were doing with Give Safely 5 years ago, when we produced the first wireframes, people were like, what are you doing? Well, it was a small investment, but it helped us get prepared. Now look at blockchain. Now look at, what's going on in the world of cryptocurrency and the investments that are going in. Well, we're ready. And now other people are coming to us wanting to partner with what we've created. So it's exciting.
It really is to kind of think about the role that thinking with that design mindset helps the organization, help charities, and help give, which ultimately the equation is to make a greater impact on our world around us. Mark Randall was sharing with me a story the other day. We talked about impact, and we're going to be sharing these stories for the remainder of this year and going forward. He told me the story about teaching at a university, and on his first day, encountering two professors who had actually won the scholarship a few generations ago. So we've done a lot to talk about the winners in that moment. But one of the things that we want to do, talk about the future that this impact and giving today has on the next generation and the next generation of leaders. And it was kind of this powerful story of, here are the design educators who actually won the scholarship years ago. And in this role, I've encountered in some of the great conversations and leading with creatives around the country, I've had people pull me aside and tell me, I won a World Studio Scholarship 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And so thinking about that, we've made sure that our focus is also looking at students whose work focuses on social, environmental, and cultural impact. So kind of refining our focus even today to where do we want to see the impact 10 years from now? How can we help facilitate these investments as a community in the next generation of leaders and impact makers?
Well, and I think giving designers that orientation to look ahead is really important. Let's face it. We're, you know how we used to watch Star Trek years ago. I'm sure everyone's heard this story, right? And, when it came out as a film or when it came out as a show, they had these transporters, these little flip phone like things, right? And we all thought these things were so cool. And then 20, 30 years later, we did it. But this is what was in someone's head. Someone designed that thing back then as a symbol of what was to come. So someone had to look out to come back. And I think designers are people we depend on to help us create that world. It's you taking what's in our heads and what's in our minds and giving us a logical destination for where something might lead.
Right.
And then bringing us back to today to try to get ourselves ready for it. How we can future-proof ourselves by envisioning things that might exist in the future, create future personas, future products from the future. Designers can help with that. You can help us take what's in our heads, what's in our aspirations, and bring it back to us today in a prototypical form that we can then build off. That's the beauty of design, I think, Benny.
I couldn't agree more. You're absolutely right. I want to share this with our audience because it always makes me smile when I hear you talk about design. For those who may not have dug a little deeper into the background, Art, you started off as an accountant, as a CPA, then went back to school and became a lawyer, then was a business executive, then it moved into the nonprofit space. And now a lot of the world, like you said, we talk about is teaching and engaging people in the future. Talk a bit about how you've kind of embraced change and all of that you've learned and experienced really comes through you thinking about charity organizations and impact and change today.
Well, for me, I'm just curious about the world. I just believe in continuing to learn and to evolve. I was one of the people who didn't quite know what I wanted to do when I grew up, and I looked in the newspaper and I saw that all the jobs were in accounting. I didn't have a particular passion for accounting, but accounting became the thing. I learned a lot as an accountant, but I also learned that there were so many other things that I could do with that knowledge. And it so happened that I got an opportunity to work in a nonprofit organization and then ultimately to lead that organization. And that sort of has been my situation really ever since. But adding to what I had from an experiential standpoint,
Right.
and an educational standpoint, continuing and lifelong learning.
Right.
And as a leader, I think it's incumbent upon you to continue to reinvent yourself, to continue to add on and accrete new information and insights, because that's what your value is. You don't really have any other value. Nobody really asks me to do much at work other than to help lead. I mean, I have a great team. They do things, but my job is to really think and to really present insights and ideas and to support them in what they do in very unique and creative ways. So in order to do that, I've got to be, getting the most out of everything in the world. I have this, I don't know how much people are into Facebook, but I love Facebook for one reason: Facebook groups. Because it's enabled me to connect with some really interesting people. So one of the things I have on Facebook is this page called Signals.
Right.
And Signals is this group that I created where people can come on and post weird things that they're seeing. And that's the whole purpose of it. If you see something weird, put it up there. It could be like a plastic road, an experiment with plastic roads, or it could be a flying car, or it could be something dealing with, a new drug intervention that you're seeing. It could be a statement that someone made. It could be a policy that, if it were to blow up, could become really transformational in our society. It could be a new organization. Any number of things that are just new, weird, on the edges, we post. And seeing one of them doesn't mean a whole lot. But if you see 2 or 3 of them, then you're starting to get a feel that something's happening.
Right.
So I ask people to join our Signals page and begin posting things, because that also refreshes me. It gets me thinking about different things that I need to be prepared for. So that's really my thing, Benny. And you know what else I love? I love being reverse mentored. Like you, I'm sure you get lots of people coming to you saying, I would like for you to be my mentor, or can we talk? And I love that. But I tell them it's a two-way street. Don't just expect that I'm going to be mentoring you. I want you to mentor me. I want to know what's going on in spaces where I might be blind a little bit. So I think the reverse mentoring concept is really important, especially in a world that's moving as fast as ours. We got to continue to reinvent, and we got to continue to learn, and we got to continue to experiment and try different things in order to make our lives fulfilling and meaningful and accomplish the objectives that are important to us.
I'll ask this question for you as we kind of round out. What are you excited about for 2022?
Well, I'll tell you this will give you an idea. I'm excited as we end 2021, because it's a precursor, I think, for 2022. Our family is getting together again for Thanksgiving, and we didn't do it last year.
Right.
So that to me is a big symbol for what to expect, I hope, in 2022. What I'm most optimistic about is that maybe we'll be able to better understand the limitations of virtual life, but also add into that the limitations maybe for the things that we got from virtual life that we can add on to life outside of virtual.
Right.
A new creative thing that we did, Benny, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how this works in 2022. We added on to Give Safely the acquisition of some property in a virtual universe.
Okay.
Virtual world. So we now have Give Safely on Crypto Voxels, which is a virtual world where people are acquiring property and hosting events. And I'm really looking forward to how we can meet someday virtually, but in a virtual world, not just, with our digital analogs, so to speak, and with our digital beings. And this is also, I think, a great opportunity for designers, because the virtual world is one that we have entire control over how it gets designed and how it's implemented and how it operates, the values and so forth. Designers should be all over the virtual world, the meta world, as we've heard, right? The meta world. Designers should be all over that, because it's so exciting, because it's literally we're starting from a whole new frontier of how we engage and interact with each other. So that's going to be exciting. And, I'm a family person, so I'm really looking forward to spending more time now with my grandchildren and looking for things that we can do at give.org and all the other organizations that I'm affiliated with, including AIGA, to deliver huge value for the citizens of the country and the world.
Well, I can't think of a better way to end than how we began, with the statement of gratitude. So I am thankful, Art, and thankful for all of you listening. I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. I told you it would be unexpected. We talked about giving and crypto and meta universe and how we can come and do work together. So Art is going to be invited back. We're going to have this conversation again next year at this time, Art, so we can continue to explore the ways in which design and the charity sector can work together. So thank you for spending this time with us, with CPA and lawyer, transformer, wise giver, incredible collaborator, futurist, and dear friend of design, Art Taylor.
Always enjoy it. Always enjoy being with you.
Well, with that, we wish everyone a wonderful beginning to a season of gratitude with family and friends. And we encourage you in your own way to have an impact this Giving Tuesday, and visit give.org and support AIGA's World Studio Scholarships. Thank you so much, Art.